Kalispera and good afternoon. Hello, everybody. I'm Yiannis, Touliatos, Vassilis, Salis. We're from Microsoft, and we hope you're going to have an interesting session today around the viral OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, etc. So since this is a small room, a small audience, if you have questions, sorry, 1 second.
Sorry guys, you shouldn't eat here, so if you have food, you shouldn't open it. Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry for the interruption, but I have food.
Okay, no worries. Okay, no food. Okay, can we drink water? Okay, I'd like to keep this, we'd like to keep this informal since it's a small audience. If it was much larger, then things would be a little different, but encourage you to ask questions, raise your hands. We'll also have some time at the end for Q&A as well. I realize that there's a mix of audience, like different skill sets. Some people are deeply technical, others are less technical, more on the business side. So we're going to kind of keep it in the middle somewhere, okay? If something is going above someone's heads, just raise your hand and we'll simplify it. Sound good? Okay. Cool. We'll talk a little bit about GPT and all of this this AI virality right here. So this image was created. I created it. I didn't. AI created it. Bing.com create. So this is using GPT's 𝐂𝐢𝐜 model. It created this depiction of an AI helping people. I asked it, I just prompted, I put in text prompt. I said, make an image for me in digital art of an AI helping people. And this is what it came up with. So kind of interesting. I don't see people though. I see more androids or something like that.
People because it has muscles.
Yeah, maybe.
And the left hand is machine.
But it's interesting. So I'm gonna hand it over to Vassilis to talk a little bit about himself, his background, talk about myself then, and then we're gonna get into it.
So hi from myself, again. I'm Vassilis. I have been working in Microsoft for the last 8 years, and currently my role is a technical one. I'm a cloud solution architect. My background is on the development ecosystem, if you like. And before Microsoft, I used to be a co-founder in a startup of my own a few years back. So in general, I would say that I'm, a developer in heart, while I'm doing different things right now. But the demo that I will be doing, it will be how somebody could address OpenAI and these new services from a developer standpoint, right? So how we can use the technology without actually knowing how it works, but actually take advantages of the benefits that it provides, and what are the use cases that we can use it, and where it doesn't work that well, right? So in a few minutes after Yiannis takes it on.
Cool. Thank you, Vassilis. Thank you. So I'm Yiannis Touliatos. I'm in Microsoft about 12 years. This time around 6 years. Tomorrow, 6 years. Straight. And I'm the technical director for our ISV partners in Central Eastern Europe. Prior to joining Microsoft, I had a company. I was a founder. We were both a systems integrator and a startup, both working with Citrix and developing software for Citrix to enhance their products. Well, Citrix is no longer. And overall, I'm about 30 years into the tech industry. I know that ages me, but anyways. My first computer was a Timex Sinclair 1000 with 4K of RAM, so now you get an idea. We've come a long, long way since then. But I want to talk to you a little bit about AI. Anyone in the room here understand have not worked with AI? Raise your hands if you haven't. Okay. Everyone else
is an expert.
Is an expert. You've all used ChatGPT, right? Okay. Even my 15-year-old son is using ChatGPT, so he's becoming an expert more so than me. But AI has been around for a while, since the 1950s. we had then, back then, before my time, before probably most everybody's time here, we had, they had capacity constraints, computing constraints, right? They didn't have powerful computers. They were the size of rooms at that time. But it was around then. And then there were exponential improvements over the decades. So in the 1990s, 2000s, we started developing machine learning. So the models that would allow, in simple English, welcome, milady, allowing the machines to make predictions based on data that it was trained on, and allowed to make predictions for future. Could be for sales forecasts, for all kinds of different things. Going on into the 2010s, then machine learning evolved into a technique called deep learning. So it's used to process decisions, make decisions based on data, right? And making decisions based on neural networks. Now, in the last couple of years, since 2019 to be specifically, generative AI was developed. And this is essentially type of model that creates new content, right? So it is trained on various data. You all are familiar with ChatGPT, right? So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's trained on various data. Could be audio, it could be visual, it could be text, and then it will create new content based on that, right? So based on different prompts that you give it. So we've heard all about this company, OpenAI. Anybody not heard of OpenAI? Probably, I mean, in 5 days, it had over 1 million users. That's incredible, right? I think Facebook, for 1 million users, took them about a year, 12 months, 13 months, something like that. Took quite some time. This is incredible. But why OpenAI? What made it different, right? We have bots, we have virtual assistants, you know, the Siris and Google Assistant and so forth, the Alexas, the smart speakers. They weren't as human, and they were programmed only to be able to tell you the weather, play a song, etc. And with OpenAI, so they started around, I think, 2017. In 2019, Microsoft partnered with OpenAI. We invested about $1 billion then. And very recently, in November of this year, we invested something like $10 billion into OpenAI. Now they're valued at like $29 billion. Now, but what makes, so OpenAI have various different models. So GPT, you've heard of the ChatGPT. This is essentially understands text, prompts, and responds and provides answers in some type of text, depending on what you're asking it. There's this Codex, which generates code. So for software developers, think of it as an AI pair programmer. So helping developers to develop software more efficiently, faster, not replacing the developer, because it's not going to be able to write the entire software for you. It will write parts, and it may not be fully accurate, right? So still you need people to check in on that. The DALL-E is essentially trained on images from various sources on the internet, and it will generate images from text prompts. And I'll have some examples. The one in the first slide was one of those. And then the ChatGPT, which is the bot version of these models. So with generative AI, so DALL-E, this morning, I created this image this morning, or had DALL-E create this image this morning. I had it, my prompt was a New Year oil painting in a Monet style with the Acropolis skyline, fireworks, family, rabbits, and a light color. And it provided this for, I had actually 4 different versions. I encourage you to go to bing.com/create and you can try it out. It's free to use. It was really interesting. So Codex, and there's other models as well. There's Discourse, Midjourney, and other ones that are using these kinds of technologies, these models. Codex here, I had it write a SQL database query for me based on this information. I explained what the table was, and I wrote create a SQL query for all customers in Washington State, and then the customer's name were my name, okay, and provided me a prompt, a SQL query right away. And I might not know what that is. In GPT, I asked it to describe a terrible hangover using the language of Yoda from Star Wars. And it took on the persona of Yoda. I was like, wow. I won't read it to you, but you get the idea. So why is OpenAI different? So as you can see here, a typical machine learning for natural language processing, these are all, think of these all as models, one model. So like sentiment, right? So you can train sentiment models to detect if something is positive or negative, etc. And there's lots of data to train this, and that single model is highly optimized for that particular case. With OpenAI's GPT 3.5 and 4 now, it takes all of these models, all of these models, and puts them into one big bucket, right? So, and it can, it describes what you want in human language. You can talk to it in human language, and Vassilis will show you a little bit later in a live demo what this looks like. And it can be used for summarizing of text, writing code, etc., etc. Really, really powerful stuff. Now, with the partnership, Microsoft partnership with OpenAI, we're integrating OpenAI into our Microsoft Azure platform. This is a small depiction of just Azure AI. Azure is vast, right? Think of it as a box of Legos with a lot of different pieces, and you can build many, many different things based on your imagination and also knowledge. Now, we have the Azure OpenAI service, which is essentially API. We've opened up APIs, application programming interfaces, so that companies, our customers, our partners can develop and call those APIs and leverage the OpenAI models. So you don't have to be an expert in artificial intelligence to leverage the power of that. More recently, I mean, I'm having a hard time keeping up myself. We announced, in the middle of March, we announced Microsoft 365 Copilot, which takes the OpenAI models and integrates across our Office 365 or Microsoft 365 applications. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're doing that as well with Dynamics 365. We're doing that with Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Microsoft Teams. Just a few days ago, we announced Security Copilot. So I don't know, some of you may or may not know, but we're also a security vendor. We are the most attacked company on the planet. We invest some over $2 billion a year in just security research and development. Okay, and we have some 4,000 security engineers full-time only working on security. So it's in our best interest to be secure and keep our customers and partners secure. So we're leveraging AI and OpenAI, GPT-4 specifically, with our security workloads to even provide even more compelling solutions and help detect all of the attacks, the threats that are coming in real time, and learn and predict from them and evolve. So OpenAI and Azure OpenAI specifically, there are so many different capabilities. I mean, you can do language translation. I can write, I think we have some guests also from Lithuania, if I'm correct. So I don't speak Lithuanian. I've been to Lithuania several times, and I can write in Greek or in English and have GPT translate real time to Lithuanian and back and forth. So imagine the possibilities. I just recently finished my executive MBA at Sheffield University, and I was thinking, man, I wish I would have had this tool for helping me with my dissertation, which was on AI, but supply chain. That would have sped up the process. I mean, and that we need to think about how that's going to affect education, right? And universities and schools, because I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. It depends on how it's used, but it can be used for providing outlines. I'm planning on going on a road trip in a couple of weeks with my two teenage boys, and I asked GPT to give me some ideas for a road trip in northern Greece with two teenage boys, and it gave me a huge list, and it saved me like 3 hours of research. So limitless opportunities, really depending on your imagination, identifying business problems and use cases, and you can do a lot. I'm really excited about the future. So some of the top 4 capabilities and use cases that we've identified now is our content generation. Okay, so like for write me a summary for my meeting minutes, etc. Right? Could do that. Especially with Teams, we can do that now. Provide meeting minutes, even if you missed a meeting, it can provide you that. Also, a summarization. So tell me, just in brief bullets, what I need to know. And then code generation, so helping developers be more efficient and use their time more effectively, and semantic search. So those are some of the top 4 cases that we're seeing, but that's going to change, right? Yes.
Can we ask questions?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what I said.
About the social media trends summarization, do you mean that they have access to all the social media posts?
No. But you can feed it information and get summaries. So what we're seeing as well is companies are going to start evolving and developing plugins for GPT. So interfacing with different systems. Right? Go ahead.
Regarding the natural language to code. Yeah. Thank you. Regarding the natural language to code conversion, is this only applicable for SQL? Because I saw recently GitHub CoPilot was released and it raised some concerns in legislators and copywriters.
So good question. It's not only for SQL. GitHub Copilot can write in many different languages, and your data stays with you, right? So it's only creating it's creating new content. It's not creating content from other people. I hope that answered your question. So Microsoft 365 Copilot is leveraging the large language models that OpenAI has developed, and that interfaces with Microsoft Graph. Anyone know what Microsoft Graph is? Doesn't know? Okay, well, I'll explain it in brief. Microsoft Graph, you know, Microsoft 365, all these different applications. You have Teams, you have Exchange Online, you have etc. Right? It's basically is the glue, if you will, for your data across all these different applications and SharePoint and so forth. And then the Microsoft 365 apps. So integrating all of that, right? So it's embedded across your Microsoft 365 app. So think of this. My girlfriend, she works in an accounting office, and she uses Excel a lot. And I'm like, why don't you use Microsoft 365 Copilot to automate your life, and then you can go for coffee. The way we live and work is gonna change, and we have to think about how we can work more smartly, right? And there will always be a need, I believe, for humans, for quality controls, and we're going to talk about as well hallucination that AI has, right? I don't know if you're familiar, but Vassilis is going to demo that to show you. And I'm going to play a little video now on Microsoft 365 Copilot to give you a view, since we don't have that much time. Yes, please.
Do you know about this meme that says, shut up and take my money?
Hold on. Say that again?
Do you know about this meme that's like, shut up and take my money?
Yeah.
Right? That's how I felt after seeing this when it was released. And then I got Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
But as far as I checked like a few weeks ago, it's still not on full rollout. You cannot get this right now, right?
Yeah, it's in preview.
What's the okay? Can you help me get the preview?
Come talk to me later and we'll see. But I think you got an idea that things are moving really fast and gonna change a lot of things. Whether we like it or not, it's here, right? And whether Microsoft does it or not, other companies are gonna do it as well, right? So now the last decade has been about software is eating the world. The next decades are about large language models eating software. Everything is changing. It's going to eat it all up and change things. So, food for thought. So these are some of the, I showed you a little bit about Microsoft 365 Copilot. Microsoft, the AI, our AI, and OpenAI are enabled across many different of our existing products and platforms. I mentioned Teams and Power BI, etc. And this is and virtual agents and Microsoft Viva and so forth. GitHub Copilot, which GitHub you know, is a platform that we acquired that for developers, and for source code, versioning control, and so on and so forth. Now we have Copilot that allows people, developers, to develop software more efficiently. And you know, our Azure OpenAI service and Security Copilot, which I didn't have time to put something in here on that since it's so new. So with Copilot, with GitHub Copilot, think of it as your assistant that's giving you suggestions while you're developing. Also with prompts, you can get suggestions. You can have it improve those suggestions as well. So an iterative approach. Don't believe it on its first attempt. Always check, always do fact checking. And that applies as well to GPT, ChatGPT, etc. Okay? It will act like it knows and the answer is truthful. It may not be. So always double check. And that's something that's imperative to do. I'm going to hand it over now to Vassilis to show you in real time some demos around this. And feel free to ask questions.
So let's switch the video. Okay, so before I start, when I'm usually at the audience, what I like is when somebody is doing a demo, I'm expecting when things are going to go wrong, right? So I hope that everything's going to work.
Did you make a sacrifice to the demo class this morning?
I forgot. Let's see what will happen. Okay, so let me start a bit. So what you're seeing in my screen is actually the OpenAI Studio. It's a playground that you can play around with these models. And this is a service that has been provisioned under Azure, right? So I wouldn't like to bother you with the details of how you're doing it. It's very straightforward. And once you get the access, it's pretty much the next screen that you'll see is this playground. So I have provisioned a few models like DaVinci 3, 2, and ChatGPT. So
Vassilis, what is DaVinci 3?
It's actually a language model that you described previously, more or less. Cool. Right, so
I didn't mention it though.
That's true. That's true.
I just want to make sure people know.
True. So, first of all, I wouldn't describe myself as an AI or machine learning engineer, right? I'm coming more from a developer standpoint. I know a few things about this technology and what it does, right? So, in general, this technology is great at when you're giving it a prompt, like a text to begin with. It is very good at completing the sentences, completing the rest of the text in a way that it looks good and it looks legit, right? So if we have this principle in mind, everything that we're going to see more or less, stands on this principle. So I'm going to start showing a couple of examples, and at the same time, I will describe how I would think as a developer or as somebody that I would like to create a new solution or extend an existing solution with features and capabilities of this technology, right? So let me start with a couple of examples, right? So I will use my already prepared text. And can you see my screen? Is it okay? All right, so this is a transcript from a car accident, right? An accident happened and the driver is calling the insurance company, instructing about the details, what took place, what happened, and so on. And this is pretty much the transcript in text. So what I would like to instruct the model is, first of all, I'm asking it to please read the following phone conversation. And what I would like to you to do is to summarize some key points, like the reason for the call, what was the cause of the incidents, the name of the drivers, and so on, right? So, and also I'm instructing it to answer in a very short way and highlight these things. And actually, it's working pretty cool, right? It identified the reason, it identified the cause, the driver names, the location, what was the summary in general, right? So this is very impressive, and it's actually doing a pretty good job at what I instructed to do. Now, let's move a bit to a different domain, right? So let's move to the legal side of things, let's say. And let's suppose that we have a non-disclosure agreement that describes, what, for example, Matteo Gomez should do and should not do, the address that he's residing, the liability in case that somebody breaks the NDA and so on. So I would like also to instruct the model to give me some key points, like when the contract was signed, who signed it, the address, and what is the cost of breaching such an NDA. And I'm going to get the bullets back. And again, this is a case that it works pretty well, right? So now, if I start thinking as a developer and thinking of APIs that Yiannis mentioned, the programmable interfaces, I might like to provide maybe a legal API, right? And where this model is really powerful is that it understands many different concepts, right? So very easily I could do exactly the same thing. And for people with technical background, you will understand that exactly the same things I could instruct it to reply in JSON. So for people who don't know, JSON is something that developers usually do, and they use it as a language to communicate between different systems, right? So the outcome is going to be exactly the same, but the formatting of the text is different, right? So it understood that it needs to reply in a JSON format, and actually this reply here is something that it can be an API, right? It's something that can be really easily integrated in an existing solution and augment what is already doing. So these are two examples where this technology shines. It works really well, but we need also to understand when we're building a solution, the things it can do and the things that it's not the best tool to work with. And let me give you what is called a hallucination example, right? Hallucination is when the model replies in a way that it seems legitimate, right? It seems pretty cool, but it's actually not doing that well. So we have this sentence that is a sentence that everybody that knows a bit about liability insurances, it can understand, right? So automobile liability insurance and $500,000, the minimum limit for affected people. And I'm going to ask it a very simple question that every human being would understand, right? Are the children insured, right? And it's very fair, and everybody would, give you a great answer. But the model is hallucinating and say that no, the children are not typically covered by this insurance, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that it's not a technology that fits everything. It's not the best tool for everything. We really need to understand what is capable of doing, where it works well and where it doesn't. And actually, if I change the prompt a bit, it's going to give me a good answer. It's going to provide me something that is indeed a legitimate answer. And this is what is called nowadays prompt engineering, right? So it's all about what you insert to the model and what you instruct it to complete the text afterwards. So how you actually set up the prompt, and of course compared to the model that you're using, is all about this technology, more or less.
One quick side note.
Sure.
If you go to learn.microsoft.com, we've announced prompt engineering guidelines as well. So you can take a look there as well. Thanks.
Cool. So now this playground is actually on GPT-3 models that you can use, right? Here you can see the chat GPT. This is in preview. This is something that is available the last couple of weeks. It's relatively new and is more or less exactly the same technology. It's exactly the same models under the hood. But what is different is how you have a thin layer on top of such a model that is doing a couple of things for you. And let me give you an example. My favorite example here is the Xbox customer support agent, right? So what is you doing here, and I don't know if you can read the system message. I'll try to pump it up a bit here, right? So what it's doing is all the text that I'm going to enter in the assistant setup is something that every time I make a call to the ChatGPT OpenAI endpoint, it's pretty much first pasting all this text and then the conversation that I'm doing, right? So I could do a ChatGPT bot more or less on the DaVinci 3 model that I showed, but I would have to implement as a developer this idea, right? To create the session and every time post all the conversation, right? And this service is actually doing that for me, right? So in this case, what I'm doing is extracting the model to act as an Xbox customer support agent whose primary goal is to help users with a couple of experience issues maybe. And I instruct it not to touch upon competition, let's say, and answer only when it's something related to Xbox. And also having a couple of a few short examples of how it should reply in specific ways to guide it. So it's pretty much what I said, prompt engineering, but it's a bit already available from this specific service. So let's start with a couple of questions here. So this is usually the first question that I'm asking these agents is, could you please describe yourself, right? So it's the first questions that I'm doing in order to understand if it has understand the persona that I instructed to and what is their mission, if you will. So it's doing a pretty good job, actually. It's describing themselves. So I'm going to continue with a couple of provocative questions, let's say. So I'm going to ask it about Nintendo, right? Of course, you know, Nintendo is a huge competitor. And what's really impressive, and I hope that, yeah, you can see the text, is that it understands that Nintendo is indeed a competitor, but it doesn't actually reply on the question. It says that this is something that I cannot reply, but still I know more or less what Nintendo is, right? So again, if you would have it as an automated agent, it could be doing a pretty good job, right? And let's continue with such questions. And now on the Xbox landscape, right? So what's the best game? What is the best game ever, right? Could you suggest me something that I would buy? And again, it doesn't reply in a specific way that, you know, you should buy this, but again, it understands the context and it gives me a couple of titles that they're very well known, like Minecraft, Halo, Gears of War, and so on. And finally, another question inspired a bit by the hallucination example, should my children play these games? And again, it's a pretty impressive answer that I'm an AI language model. I shouldn't tell you if your children should play or not, but here is the regulation and here is how the games are rated. So I think it's doing a pretty good job. Sure.
Doesn't the temperature have a massive role in the hallucination problem? Like if you set the temperature right now to 1.5, it will hallucinate.
Yep.
So
yeah. Okay, so for those of you that doesn't know about the temperature, this is a configuration metric, if you will, that it changes the responses of the model, right? So if it's 1 or 0, the answer is going to be more or less the same. But if you use the values in between, the odds are going to change, and every time it's going to create a different answer. And it's really about tweaking these temperature values and a couple of more configuration things that you are seeing right here. Depending on the domain that you like to approach, it will either hallucinate or actually work better. Sure.
could you give us an example? Could you change temperature and see what
Yeah, let's see what it does. Right, so let's use 0.5 and let's answer again the same question. Let's see.
is the limit different?
Okay. Okay, so I think it's more or less the same, right? All right, let's give it something like.
Are the limits the same as OpenAI's playground between 0 and 2?
The notion is the same, right? But I'm not entirely sure if it's exactly the same in this part. But the model is exactly the same service that you can get from OpenAI or hosted on Azure.
The pricing is the same.
They're a bit different of how the pricing models are modeled. I think Yianni you will be talking about pricing a bit. Okay, maybe we can discuss later on that part. Okay, so let's continue a bit with the demo. And here's where I'd like to ask if there is something, is there maybe anyone that would have a real life example, maybe on a product or a feature that they used it and they thought that is impressive Nick? Yeah, would you maybe like to introduce a bit yourself? Tell us a bit.
I'm coming from GitHub. We're doing conversational workflow automations in Microsoft Teams and Slack. So we're logged into those models, and we want to add many features in our product that are typically related. One thing that really strikes me is how it interacts with databases. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you can ask, you can just describe your tables and then ask any question. Like a real example is that we have, for instance, a table with customers, a table with charges, and a table with features that we enable to customers. And then we run an experiment where we give a feature to some customers, and we want to see a few months later how the revenue changes between the people who got the feature or not had the feature. And it's great because you can skip many steps, data scientists or engineers having to take a business question and find out where are the data and all of that stuff. So we just put the tables there, ask, just give me how revenue changed between the people who had this feature or not, things like that.
Great. So without knowing Nick and having prepared this question beforehand, this could look something like that, like having these tables here with these columns and ask it to write a SQL query that is more or less doing a database query, right? Okay, more or less. So let's see what it does. And to be honest, this doesn't work great every time, but we will give it a try. And let's see what it comes up with. So for this, I'm actually using the Davinci 2 model because it's a bit better in these types of interactions. And actually, we are not that lucky because it started doing the approach. It's quite good, but it's not yet finished, right? So in this case, temperature indeed plays quite a lot of role. Let me give it one more try and see if it will be something better. But okay, so this is actually pretty better. First of all, it understood because I asked it, please do that after August 1st, sorry. It did understand that it needs to be the 1st of August. The year is a bit random, but still you get the idea that you can tweak that. And it's actually did quite good in the summarization, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like it did join the tables and it's actually did a pretty good job to start with, or at least it gave us a pretty good direction of where we should start working on, right? And me as a developer to do such a query, it would take me like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes without doing that beforehand. And it would be, I think, a great, yes, please.
You run the second attempt with the temperature 0.75 something. And you didn't delete the previous answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the model answered based on your prompt.
You're right.
And the previous answer.
You're right.
Can you delete the whole answer and run it again?
Yeah, let's give it a try. And actually, this is why you have generate and regenerate again. So you see that every time that I run it, it's a bit different, right? So this is also part of that technology. All right, so to finish my demo, what I would like to show you as the final example is that all these things that I'm showing is very easy to integrate in your existing solutions or build solutions from scratch on top of these models. So in this case, what I have done is I have created a bot. As an interface, I have used a Teams bot, but it could be exactly the same as a Facebook bot or in any other platform that you have bots on, right? And I have named it legal counselor, right? So the idea for that part would be to actually input non-disclosure agreements and take back the key points that I showed earlier, right? So let me quickly paste the text that I showed you previously, right? And you can see that I have tested it before and it gives me the answers with not specified because it was a text, but you see that I pretty much got the answer back of who signed it, when it was signed it, and so on. And actually, this is running on my Visual Studio when I'm hosting this bot, and you can see the actual request that took place right now, right? So I have that prepared. And the interesting thing about this is that for me to do this bot, I mean, I do know the technology, but it took me like 20 minutes to set it up, right? So imagine in 20, 30 minutes just preparing for this demo that it's a solution that, you know, it's something that maybe would make sense for an existing product. Imagine the possibilities if you spend more time with it and integrate it with other services as well. And of course, the Microsoft products are a great example of this approach. Okay, so this is pretty much about it with the demo. Yianni, would you like to continue?
Thank you. Can you change to the...
So we have 5 minutes for question and answers. If you guys have any questions from the audience. But after that, we're going to transition to the next.
Cool.
Okay. I just have a couple things, but I'll take questions. Go ahead.
Yesterday I was so I'm working in marketing, and so yesterday I was using a ChatGPT to create a marketing spin for a philosophy book on Heraclitus, and spin philosophies, the philosophy of Heraclitus to show an environmental sensibility, and so ChatGPT was very good to tell me the arguments that we could use, but it was lacking precision, and then I didn't know how to take it from there. I mean, if I delete the answer and then I regenerated answers so it could answer differently, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, how to get this to be more concrete.
So that's all about prompt engineering. So you have to refine what you're asking it and how you're asking it. So spend some time. I would suggest going into learn Microsoft.com or even on YouTube and look up prompt engineering. And you're going to get, it's a completely different way of thinking of how to ask or how to talk to this AI model. I'm still learning.
But you can also train yourself by continuing the conversation with the ChatGPT, because it keeps the context from the previous
That's right.
question, and then you can refine. At least I'm not yet educated in the prompt engineering, but I tried to continue the same conversation to get to where I wanted.
Yeah, I did that.
It keeps the context,
yeah.
so that's a plus.
Okay, so since we, go ahead.
At which extent does it know mathematics? And at which extent does it understand math?
Well, it solved my my 18-year-old son's high school problems, so it depends, really. I mean, but it does understand quite a bit.
So it understands basic equations.
Yeah.
I think the answer might be prompt engineering, but how do you deal with lack of fine-tuning for your particular use case? For example, trip planning, and then I try with ChatGPT where you say like, oh, hello, I'm a 15-year-old and I want to go to Australia. And oh, hello, I'm a 60-year-old and I want to go to Australia. It gives you exactly the same thing. And you can like try to describe, okay, 60-year-old cannot walk so much, cannot go to nightclubs and so on. But we're not gonna, like the input size is just like 512, so we cannot go further. Can we fine-tune ChatGPT, or how do we deal with this?
That's a good question. Vassilis, do you have the answer?
Actually, no, to be honest.
I think we're gonna discover this soon. But you're absolutely right. I tried this as well with my example of my 2 teenage sons in the road trip. It got a framework for me, but it wasn't perfect. So I could say prompt engineering is going to be part of it, right? So refining what you're asking it, and then you will get there. But it's going to take time.
Question. I'm okay without the mic.
Okay.
So does it take into account trademarks? For example, when it generates images or when it writes copy, does it take into any account like trademark phrases or whatnot?
Well, good question. And I know there's some lawsuits going on, like with Getty Images, etc. So we need to be very careful here.
Yeah.
And this is an area I don't have the answers to. But what is the information? Where has it been? The data that it's been trained on, and so forth.
So if I prompted it to not include copyright, like trademarked copy or whatever, it wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, remember that ChatGPT is not on the internet. It's been trained with data previously that's not been in our control. So we don't know. But where things are going, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And there's questions, and we need to all speak up, right? Speak up about, those topics. There needs to be governance. But really quick, just wanted to show you coming soon, GPT-4's vision capabilities. I'm not going to read through this, but describe this bag in detail, describe the shape and fabric, the design, and anything that's notable. And it comes back with this just by uploading this image, right? Similar, Michael Jordan, right? Describe this iconic image and provide details about what makes it unique. And it recognizes that it's...
Does it just search, reverse image search the image and find the description of the image from its original source and just...
That's a good question. Let's ask Sam Altman. Or Mira Murati, who's the CTO of OpenAI. I don't know, but it's impressive nonetheless, right? Yeah. So how do you get started? Suggest going to Microsoft Learn, do a search on Azure OpenAI service. A lot of information. We have also blogs on Microsoft 365 Copilot, Security Copilot. There's sites there, and on GitHub, go to the OpenAI Cookbook. You can get a lot of information about tuning GPT as well. Think about use cases, find your use cases, use AI to help you with finding those use cases as well. And some parting thoughts. This is happening like right now. So cost of experimentation is very low, and the time to value ratio is really high. So remember that. And artificial intelligence is the platform that's going to power the next waves of digital transformation. Thank you. Katerina, really quick, I'd like you to come up to talk to the audience about Founders Hub.
Hi, everyone. Katerina 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿, leading partnerships with startups for Microsoft, Greece, Cyprus, and Malta. Before you go, we'd like to leave you with Microsoft's approach that we'd like to, and we are democratizing access to technology, especially for startups. So if you want to give it a go, we give $2,500 credits for using Azure OpenAI service on Azure, along with a lot of benefits. We have a digital accelerator. It's called Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub, and you can scan this code and start building on Azure. Thanks.
Keep calm and put it on Azure.